There is a version of you that you have never met. Not a hidden personality. Not a secret self, buried somewhere in the basement of your psyche. Something quieter than that. Something stranger. Right now, as you read these words, your brain is making thousands of decisions without asking your permission. It is choosing what you notice and what you ignore. It is deciding which memories to keep and which ones to quietly erase. It is shaping how you feel about people you haven't even met yet. And the strangest part is this. You will never know most of it happened. Think about it for a second. You believe you are in control of your own mind. You believe that when you make a choice, it is you making it. But what if most of what you call you is actually happening behind a curtain, and the version of yourself that you experience is just the highlight reel your brain decides to show you afterward? That idea should unsettle you a little. It should, because once you start looking at it closely, you realize your mind isn't just thinking for you. It's editing you. Here's what nobody talks about. Every single day, your brain receives an almost unimaginable amount of information. Sounds, images, smells, sensations, memories trying to surface, emotions trying to speak. If you were consciously aware of all of it at once, you would not be able to function. You would freeze. So your brain does something remarkable. It filters. It deletes. It compresses. And most importantly, it decides what deserves your attention and what gets thrown into the background, never to be noticed again. This is called selective attention, and it explains something you've probably experienced without realizing it. Have you ever bought a new car and suddenly you start seeing that exact model everywhere? It's not that more of those cars appeared on the road overnight. It's that your brain decided this information mattered now, so it started letting it through. Before, it was invisible. Now, it's everywhere. Nothing about the world changed. Only your filter did. That's unsettling if you sit with it. Because if your brain can hide an entire category of cars from you until it decides you need to see them, what else is it hiding? Here's where it gets even stranger. Your memories, the ones you trust the most, the ones that feel the most real, are not recordings. They're reconstructions. Every time you remember something, your brain doesn't play back a video. It rebuilds the moment from fragments, and each time it rebuilds it, small details shift. Some psychologists believe this is why two people can experience the exact same event and later remember it in completely different ways. Not because one of them is lying, but because memory isn't a mirror. It's more like a rough sketch that your mind quietly redraws every time you look at it. Now imagine what that means for the story you tell about yourself, the version of your childhood you carry with you, the version of that breakup, that friendship, that mistake you made years ago. You believe you remember exactly what happened. But some of what you're remembering is actually your brain filling in gaps with what feels true, not necessarily what was true. That's only part of the story, though. Because your mind isn't just hiding information from your memory. It's hiding your real motivations from you, too. Psychologists have a name for this. It's called confabulation, and it's one of the most humbling discoveries in behavioral science. In several studies, when people were asked why they made a particular choice, they gave confident, detailed explanations. The problem was, in many of these experiments, researchers had actually influenced the choice itself through subtle cues the participants weren't aware of. And yet people never said, "I don't know why I chose this." They always had a reason ready, a story, even when that story was completely invented by their own brain, after the fact, to make the decision feel logical. Let that sink in for a moment. Your brain doesn't just make decisions. It tells you a story about why it made them, whether or not that story is true. And you believe that story completely, because it's the only version you're allowed to see. This is where identity gets interesting. Because if part of you is invisible even to yourself, then who exactly are you? Here's what's interesting. Modern psychology suggests that the self isn't one single thing sitting inside your head, directing the show. It's closer to a committee. Different systems in your brain compete for control, moment to moment. There's the part of you that wants comfort right now. The part of you that wants long-term meaning. The part shaped by old wounds, trying to protect you from being hurt again. The part shaped by hope, still reaching for something better. What you experience as yourself is really the output of all these forces negotiating in real time, and your conscious mind is often the last one to find out what was decided. That's why sometimes you say something and immediately think, "Why did I say that?" Or you feel an emotion rise up before you can explain it. It's not because you're broken or irrational. It's because a huge portion of your mental processing happens beneath conscious awareness, and your conscious mind only receives the final decision, dressed up as if it came from a calm, reasoned place. Now here's the strange part. This hidden processing isn't something happening to you. In many ways, it's protecting you. Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for detecting threat and emotional intensity, is designed to react before your slower, more logical prefrontal cortex even catches up. This is why fear can hit you before you understand why. Why your heart can start racing in a tense conversation before you've consciously registered what upset you. Your brain evolved this way for survival. Oh, thousands of years ago, hesitating to think logically about a rustling bush could get you killed. So your mind built a shortcut. Feel first. Explain later. The problem is that same wiring still runs your emotional life today, even though most modern threats aren't physical anymore. They're social, rejection, embarrassment, being left out, being misunderstood. And your brain still treats these things with the same ancient urgency, releasing stress hormones as if your life were in danger, when really, someone just left you on read. Have you noticed how a single unanswered message can spiral your mind into imagining worst-case scenarios? That's not weakness. That's your ancient threat detection system, doing exactly what it was built to do, just aimed at the wrong century. But there's something even more fascinating hiding beneath all of this. Your brain doesn't just hide information from you. It actively shapes your reality to match what it already believes. This is called confirmation bias, and it might be the most powerful hidden force influencing your life. Once your brain forms a belief about yourself, whether it's "I'm not good enough" or "people always leave," or "I'm someone who succeeds," it starts quietly filtering the world to prove that belief right. It highlights the evidence that confirms it. It downplays or explains away the evidence that contradicts it. This isn't intentional dishonesty. It's your mind trying to keep a consistent, stable sense of who you are, because uncertainty about your own identity feels far more threatening than being wrong. This is why change feels so difficult, even when you want it. It's not just about willpower. You're fighting against a mind that has spent years, sometimes decades, curating evidence for the story it already believes about you. Now here's a deeper twist. Some psychologists believe that a portion of anxiety and self-doubt isn't caused by actual danger or actual inadequacy. It's caused by your brain misreading its own internal signals. A racing heart before a presentation isn't necessarily fear. It could just be adrenaline, preparing your body for performance. But your mind, trying to make sense of that sensation quickly, often defaults to the most familiar explanation. I must be afraid. Something must be wrong. And once that label is attached, the feeling intensifies, because now your thoughts are reinforcing the emotion, and the emotion is reinforcing the thoughts. This is one possible explanation for why some people can reinterpret nervousness as excitement and instantly feel more capable, more energized, even though the physical sensation in their body never actually changed. The feeling was never the problem. The story your mind attached to the feeling was. So if your mind can hide your memories, disguise your motivations, rewrite your emotions, and quietly build your identity behind your back, does that mean you have no control at all? Not exactly. And this is where it gets hopeful. Because even though so much happens outside conscious awareness, awareness itself is powerful. The moment you start noticing your patterns, the automatic explanations, the instant assumptions, the emotional reactions that seem to come from nowhere, you begin loosening their grip. You can't control what your brain does in the first half second, but you can learn to question the story it hands you afterward. This is why some of the most transformative moments in a person's life aren't dramatic events. They're quiet realizations. Maybe I'm not lazy. Maybe I'm exhausted. Maybe I'm not unlovable. Maybe I was just never taught how safety feels. Maybe that wasn't rejection. Maybe it was never about me at all. These small reframes don't just feel better. They change how your brain filters future experiences, which changes what evidence it gathers, which slowly reshapes the identity it protects. In other words, you are not simply a passenger inside your own mind. You are, at least partly, its editor. Not by controlling every automatic reaction, but by questioning the meaning attached to it. Maybe that's the real discovery here. Not that your mind is hiding something dark or broken, but that it's been quietly protecting you, filtering you, shaping you, long before you were old enough to understand why. And the more you learn to gently question its stories instead of blindly trusting them, the more choice you actually gain over who you become next. If this made you see yourself a little differently, there's something even more surprising waiting on the other side of this. Because if your mind can hide your true motivations from you, it raises an even bigger question. How much of what you call love, attraction, and connection is actually a conscious choice? And how much of it was decided by your brain long before you ever said hello?